Greetings and welcome to our first project, the stock market project. The goal and purpose of this particular project is to build our first cohesive automation by collectively applying all the skills and knowledge that has been acquired up until this point in the course. An upfront disclaimer is to point out that this project is not necessarily completed in the most efficient manner possible, but is done in a manner to ensure practical application of all the skills obtained up until this point in the course. That said, it's known and understood that there are indeed more efficient ways of developing the solutions we are about to build. Know that we will focus on more efficient development methods and techniques in later project assignments. So let's get started. On the screen right now are the directions or the instructions for the stock market project. What we're going to have to do is extract values from the following website, the zax.com website in particular. And what we're really honing in on is we want to extract values from the following ticker symbols or companies. So in this case, Google, Tesla, Amazon, Walmart, Twitter, and Facebook. On each of those respective pages, we're going to extract out what's known as the open value, the 52-week high value, the market cap value, and the industry rank text. So to bring a bit more of a practical view as to exactly what we're talking about here, I want to pull up the zax.com webpage. So again, what the bot's going to have to do is, come from the home page here. Notice in the top right corner, there is a search box. That's where we will enter the ticker symbols in. So I'll pick on Google here for an example. And from here, you'll notice on the kind of bottom middle here, under quote overview stock activity, here's the open value. Then we have 52-week high value. Pull this little pop up real quick. And we got open value, 52-week high value, market cap value, and then the industry rank is the text that shows up right here. So our directions are explicitly telling us to grab each of those four values across all of these companies or ticker symbols listed here. Once we get that accomplished, there's a few different things that we have to do from there. Notice the first task says remove the word industry from the industry rank line. What this is explicitly referring to is, notice on this line here, it says industry : and then the actual industry name. If we go to different companies, let me go over and bounce over to Facebook for an example. You're going to see that the screen from each company to company looks exactly the same. In this case, the line I was talking about in particular is industry here, internet services. The requirement here is asking that we remove the word industry from this exact text right here. The next one says compute the percent difference from the 52-week high based on the open value. And you'll notice there is a website out here that has a formula that we will need to use. Go ahead and pull it up really quick so you can see it. We are going to have to build this exact formula in the UiPath Studio to make that calculation happen. So the idea of taking the percent 52-week high off the open value, what's that percentage difference look like? So we will work through that particular equation. The next one then says determine which ticker has the largest and smallest open value and denote accordingly. So as we go through all the company pages, we need to be able to identify which one has the largest and which one has the smallest open value and denote accordingly. And then the last one here is a bit of a tricky one, but manageable. It says compute the industry rank based on the values provided in the industry rank text. And again, this is calling out these values right here. So the top 40% is more specifically doing the calculation of the 123 divided by 255 is what we're trying to go after here. So if I pull the calculator up, so taking the 123 dividing it by 255, you'll see we come up with a 48% number here, and that's where you get the top 48%. If we go to some of the other pages, instead of it being top, we're going to find out some of these pages list themselves at the bottom. So in this case, Google, let's see if Walmart happens to be in the bottom here. Pull Walmart up just so we can see another example of the opposite end of the spectrum. Yeah, there we go. Walmart's at the bottom here. So if I bring my calculator back, you notice it says bottom 49%. So if I do the 129 divided by 255, you'll see it shows up at more or less at the 50% mark. What we're trying to do is make these percentages uniform across the board. So obviously the higher the percentage in this case, the closer they are to being at the bottom. So if it was like they're at 254 out of 255, see they'd be at a 99%, essentially at the 100% mark. So the goal is the top would be obviously the smaller percentage, having a cohesive look that way and eliminating this factor of talking about bottom and top percentage ranks. So that's the expectation as it pertains to this task here. So once we've completed the data extractions and we've completed all these tasks, you'll notice the final ask here is that we then generate a spreadsheet that will contain a row for each single ticker value or each company. Then all the columns, this is kind of an example of what you're going to see. So the ticker symbol here, the 52-week high value that was extracted, the market cap value that was extracted. Here's the computed industry rank that we just talked about a moment ago. And then the industry without the word industry displayed here. The percent for 52-week high calculation will be listed here. And then the min/max open value column. So you'll notice it's talking about either maximum or minimum, depending on if the open value is truly minimum or maximum for that particular company. All the other return values will remain blank or empty if they are not the largest or smallest record found. So those are the requirements for this particular assignment. So let's go ahead and dig into Studio and make this thing happen. So the first thing we need to do is open up Studio, go to the very page that we're accustomed to going to this point. We need to create a new project as a process here, and just as we've done for a lot of our similar projects up until this point. Obviously, this one being the first time we've cohesively applied all of the skills that have been learned at this point. So open up new project as a process inside Studio. I'm going to simply call this one Stock Market Demo, and then go ahead and save your project to the folder that you've been working in to this point. From a description point of view, we can say extract ticker values from Zacks.com website. Say, I don't know, open value, 52-week high, market cap, and industry rank. Producing spreadsheet output. I don't know, something along those lines. Just again, a meaningful description of what this particular project does. Obviously, I've omitted some of the more specific details here, but we're going to grab these values and subsequently produce a spreadsheet that we know is going to have a bit more detail, but our long-term goal by the time we complete the project is to have a spreadsheet. So stock market demo, give your path to wherever you have been saving your projects to this point, meaningful description, and simply click create. Inside of here, we obviously will get our blank canvas that we can begin building our automation to accomplish the task at hand. So give this thing just a second to load. The first step that we need to do, as my project just looked like it completed as I tabbed over, we need to first tell UiPath to get to the Zacks.com webpage. This will be an activity that we have not played with to this moment in time. So let me help you out a bit with that activity. Go ahead and open up the main workflow, either from the link there, or you can double click the XAML file in the project tab over on the left. And in this case, I want to bring in a new activity called Open Browser. So in your activity window here, look for an Open Browser activity. And what Open Browser does is it will open up a web browser of our choice, and you'll notice that as the activity comes into play, it's also going to prompt us what web page do we want to navigate to. So a couple quick things that I want to point out here before we get too deep into this. The open browser, one of the properties over here on the right talks about the browser type. Let's go ahead and set this one to work in Internet Explorer. We want to make sure that, again, when we're working inside of Studio, it's preferred to use Internet Explorer because of the close connectivity between UiPath and the IE browser due to the interconnectivity of the .NET framework that exists. So if possible, always try to build your automations using Internet Explorer, or I should say any web-based automation, make sure that you build using Internet Explorer, if at all possible. Obviously understood, you may run into situations where the application that you need to automate against isn't compatible with IE or doesn't perform or behave well in an IE browser. Notice in here, you've got the ability to select some of the other browsers as well. Again, if you select these other browsers, recall earlier in conversation, you need the ability to bring in the browser extensions for the associated browser that you're ultimately working in. So without bewildering a point here, make sure that your browser type in our activity here is set to IE. We will build this automation using IE. If you use the hyperlink in the document, or if you copy and paste the value here, either will work. Ultimately, you want to get to the home page. Obviously, I've kind of navigated away, but let me get back to the same spot that everybody else would be at this point. You should be on just the zax.com webpage here. We want to grab the URL here, the entire URL, bring this back into Studio. In the open browser where it says insert URL here, in quotes, this is a string, paste in your value, zax.com. If you save your activity to here, I want to close Internet Explorer for just a moment. If I run my file now, if I debug my current file, you should see that IE opens up and navigates us to zax.com. And sure enough, looks like my automation was successful. The execution has ended. On the screen, I see that zax.com is officially up and running. So going back into Studio, another thing that I want to get in the habit of doing is on our activities here, make sure you update the title so we have a bit more detail and understanding exactly what these activities are doing. In this case, navigate to zax.com website. I know it looks a bit generic. The more complex some of our activities become, these actually become very helpful and meaningful as to what the particular behavior is doing. So sequence up top here, we'll just simply say something along the lines of process stock ticker symbols. Another neat thing that you can do here too, and I probably won't do it too often in here, but just to demonstrate another point, if I do a right click here and type in or go down to annotations and say add annotation, notice I've got the ability to type in some additional text. So I want to simply say something along the lines of processing ticker symbols in order to capture the open value, 52-week high value, market cap, and industry rank from each respective page, something along those lines. As soon as I click out of here, look what happens. It shows up immediately underneath. So if you need to have additional context as to what a particular activity is doing or why an activity was developed or set up the way it was, this use of annotations is an excellent opportunity to be able to provide a bit more of an English contextual reference as to what this particular activity is doing. In this case, this sequence talking about the whole solution here. We could have added an annotation here If we needed to, I'm not going to, but just to demonstrate, you can add annotations to each and every one of your individual activities. So with that said, we're looking good. We got to the Zax.com webpage the way we desired. So that's the first major part here. Notice it then goes on to say that we need to extract ticker symbols from the following companies. Hopefully, as you're looking at the example provided here, you immediately start thinking array. And the reason why I talk about array, recall when we were working on our array activity earlier, the open curly brackets, the closing curly brackets, and then in the case inside here, the quote individual quotes. So this would be a string-based array holding each of the ticker values. We can actually copy this value, and obviously talking about it being an array, we need to make sure we define a new array inside of our automation. So taking that, copy this here. I have to do a little bit of cleaning up to get it to be truly formatted correctly, but it'll save us a bit of typing here. If I go down to my variables, let's create an array called str tickers. Notice variable type right now is defaulting to string. I need to change this to an array of strings. It needs to be able to hold multiple values. So going back to our definition of array being a box or a container that holds a value. Remember, a single string only holds a single company at a time or a single item at a time. An array allows us to put multiple items in the variable holding multiple values. So each company, each ticker value being of type string. So we say okay here. And we're going to take advantage of the default value. In this particular case, we could bring in an assign activity up here and assign str tickers equal to what we put in the default box. We'll just save ourselves the use of one additional activity by pasting in our values here. And you heard me say we had to do a little bit of cleaning up here. Notice we got an error. Notice I also have extra characters in here. I got those parentheses, the colon, I need to get rid of those. Get down to just here, and it looks like even the quotation symbols aren't quite right. Notice I got some red text showing up right here. So what I need to do is replace all of these double quotes. I'm deleting them and doing a shift quote for the double quote on each one of these. You likely will need to do the same. So there's even an extra space there at Facebook. Notice all the text now after I completed that little task, everything is now showing up in red text. We got the open curly bracket on the front end side, and we got the closed curly bracket on the end. That it's exactly the values that need to be typed in here. Again, copying and pasting what I had from the directions of the project directly into the default value here. So now I have an array that holds all of the ticker values. So that's this part right here. So at this point, we really accomplished everything in the primary bullet point here. We now need to slowly start working our way towards being able to extract out the values here. Obviously, this is going to take a bit of logic to pull that off, but very doable. So when you think of an array, hopefully you start immediately thinking of a for each loop. We need the ability to walk through each and every single company here and grab their values from the Zax.com webpage. So with that said, let's go ahead and bring in a for each activity here. Again, make sure you don't do for each row. For each row, again, is specific to a data table. Notice my for each is hiding out down here a little bit. This for each workflow control for each loop. Bring it into the do of your navigate to Zax.com webpage. And obviously, once we get into the for each loop here, we want to loop through our ticker array. So str tickers needs to show up on the right side. Recall our item over here, we can replace, we'll simply call this one ticker. So we're going to loop through all the tickers, plural. The for each loop is going to process one ticker, singular, at a time. Recall this is a string array, so our type argument over here, you could leave it as an object, it would work, except then you'd have to typecast every single one of your ticker here to be a .to string. So to save ourselves a step here on the type arguments for each loop, let's set it to string here. This will ensure that ticker is defined as a string value inside of our for each loop. As a kind of reminder, remember ticker here is a variable, but it's inherently kind of built into the for each activity, so it doesn't show up as an explicit variable here. This type argument becomes the type argument that ticker inherits or uses. So in this case, ticker being string, obviously we have a string array. This is why we're making that change right there. On this for each here, this would be appropriate to say process each ticker symbol in the str tickers array, something along those lines. You know, we're going to loop through each, so process each instead of for each. Obviously, it's for each activity, but it's simply saying we're going to process each one as we go through. So just to see if our for each loop is truly behaving the way we intend or desire, I'm going to bring in a log message activity. And I believe this might be the first time we've talked about it. Up to this point, I'm pretty sure that we've only talked about using write line. Log message is pretty much identical to a write line, but it has one important benefit or advantage above and beyond that. Notice here in the pop-up tooltip box here, it says it writes the specified diagnostic message at the specified level. Here's the important part. These messages are also sent to Orchestrator and displayed in the logs page. So our next project moving forward, and obviously as you start to build more production grade automations, you want your log messages to land inside Orchestrator so you've got the ability to see what the bot is doing, especially when we get into running bots in an unattended fashion to where they're running server side without human intervention or involvement. The use of log messages and those logs going into Orchestrator become our eyes as the developer, being able to see what the bot is actually doing. But that also implies we need to be very specific as it pertains to the placement of our log messages, and then obviously the content that we put into these log messages. So go ahead and bring log message activity in, place it into the body of our for each loop. This is what I was talking about, the various levels. This is really, once we get inside Orchestrator, I'm going to do a demonstration here at the moment, but when down the road, when we start looking at log messages inside Orchestrator, there's some filtering capabilities built into Orchestrator that you're able to hone in on specific values here. We're going to probably, in the case of this project and our future activities, future projects down the road, stick with placing everything at an informational level unless there is a need to truly set a bit more of a warning or fatal critical error type solution here. So go ahead and set your log level to informational. We're going to say processing ticker. So this is just like our write lines that we've always done. Processing ticker, and say ticker on this side. This will show up in our output window just like the write line has done in the past. Again, the only notable change here, and it's not even something that we're necessarily going to see in this particular project because I'm not going to get us into Orchestrator just yet. That's future work coming down the pike. Just know that this log message not only is now showing up in the output window here, but it's also being captured inside of our Orchestrator for us, inside the logs of Orchestrator. At this point, all we've done is we've added the for each loop. We've added a log message so we can actually see, are we truly indeed looping through each record? I'm going to go ahead and close down IE because if I don't, it's going to continuously reopen additional windows and things are going to get messy. So I'm going to make sure before I run, each time I go to run my automation, I want to make sure that IE is closed. So IE right now is totally closed on my machine. go ahead and play or debug the current file again, we should see a similar result, i.e. should open up to zax.com. There it is, i.e. or Studio should complete, and in my output window I should see each of the ticker results successfully displayed in the output window here. So this is telling me that I am indeed successfully navigating through each individual company now. All right, we're now in a position where we need to add another new activity. This new activity is known as the type into activity that will allow us to enter each of the ticker symbols into the search box found in the top right-hand corner of the zax.com webpage, so right up here in the top corner. So let's go back into Studio. Let's look for a type into activity. Let's see here, UI automation elements, keyboard type into. Let's bring this directly underneath our log message. You'll notice here it has the indicate element inside browser. It inherits this text here since we are contained inside of the open browser activity right here. So it knows that this particular activity is associated with that open browser activity. So when we click here, notice it's going to bring us into, I kind of call it the vision mode in which UiPath is able to see the user interface. It's wanting us, the developer, to select where we want UiPath to begin typing into. So obviously for us, as I kind of mouse around here, if I wanted to go into this text box down here, I could. But obviously I'm interested in the search box in the top right-hand corner. Notice as I hover over the text box, the box kind of grays itself out. I'll leave here for a minute. You can see it in its kind of white space here. As I hover back over, you notice it goes gray, and then more importantly, you get kind of that yellow, orange, golden color box that wraps around the object, in this case, the text box that we want to ultimately be able to type into. And all we have to do here is simply click. And it'll take us back into Studio here. You'll now see we have a type into activity on the screen. We always should come in first things first anytime we're dealing with typing into or clicking in type activities or hotkeys, depending on how the hotkey is set up. We always need to come in and look at the selector and see if the selector looks like it is, again, generic enough that it can work across all instances, yet specific enough that it's really, in this case, going to hone in on that exact text box. So generic enough that, notice this top box is, again, taking it from the open browser activity. So as long as we're on, and you look at the wild cards here, anything that's, zax.com, so it's generic enough that way, but then specific enough on the other side that this does look to be a really awesome selector that we're talking about, an input box that is associated with searching. So you can always hit highlight here just to see, it definitely has the box there, which is good. Should not need to modify this selector. We'll get into some needs of changing selectors here momentarily. Another best practice that I try to always get in the habit of doing when I bring in a new type into or click type activity is to always come in here and look at the wait for ready property. Notice the wait for ready property is talking about don't wait at all for the target to be ready, which to me is kind of dangerous. That means the web page is loaded, or if it's not the web page, it's the application that has been loaded. Go ahead and immediately start trying to type. There may be a case where something like that may be necessary. We've got the interactive mode here, which is more or less talking about part of the application's loaded. So if that text box is ready to be typed into, go ahead and start attempting to type, even if the web page or application hasn't been fully loaded yet. Me personally, I always try to use the complete option at all times. Make sure the application is successfully loaded before we attempt to do any type of interaction with the activity. So I'm going to change my wait for ready to complete. Another thing with text fields that I always try to get in the habit of immediately coming in and updating is also this empty field. What this is talking about is before we begin typing in the box, just as a safety check, safeguard here, make sure the text box is completely empty before we begin typing into it. So changing that to become true here, empty field to true or checked. And then obviously here, the text that needs to be typed into the box, that's what this guy down here is talking about. So what I want to do here is I want to bring in our variable that we had here a moment ago from the for each loop, taking the current ticker that's being processed, simply type it into the search box here. So whatever text shows up here is what's ultimately going to get typed into this particular box right here. The other cool little feature here, as long as simulate type here is turned off, we have the ability to send a hotkey. So when we get done typing a ticker symbol in, let me maybe elaborate on this a bit more. So if we type in Google, an easy way to trigger the search to start happening is by pressing the enter key. So notice I've just now pressed the enter key. Hard for you to see that obviously virtually this way. But I've hit the enter key, the Google page is attempting to load right now. And then here's Google's page here. And that was all done and executed because I hit the enter key. We can drive that similar type behavior here. I'm going to go back here a second. We can draw or drive a similar type behavior here by using these special keys here. If you notice, as I hit the little plus icon here, I've got the ability to come down and press enter. So at this point, I want to save my little work to here. Oh, another good point. Update our title here was one other thing I've omitted to do. Enter ticker symbol into search box. Just a brief description of what this activity is doing. Kind of obvious here with the image, but just so we can have a bit more clear reference. It again, a good practice to get into updating our titles on all of our activities. So at this point, it should enter in and press the enter button on every single record here. Similar to what we had in our for each loop with our output here. Should go through, enter the ticker, press enter, navigate to the next page. Then on the next page, enter Tesla and work our way down the list. So let's see what type of results we get here. I'm going to go ahead and make sure IE is closed. Then go ahead and run our automation here. IE should again, with the open browser, open itself up automatically and work its way down each record. So let's see what type of results we get here. It looks like we've got a potential problem here. I'm not seeing Google getting typed in. None of the pages are changing here. The UiPath is blinking. It's implying that it's already done executing, but it has done nothing. And as you can see, it's gone through the list here, but it actually has not done a single thing here, which is very unfortunate. Sometimes this is where we have to start looking at the simulate type activity here. Sometimes certain text fields, depending on the applications that we're in, sometimes you have to turn on simulate type or vice versa. Sometimes simulate type does not work. I'm going to turn it on and see if it doesn't happen to change any results here. I'm going to turn that on. You heard me a minute ago say we cannot use the hotkeys here, as a concatenated value pressing enter. I want to demonstrate that for just a moment so you can actually visually see what that looks like. Let me close my old browser here. So the only thing that I've changed here with the problem that I saw that it was not typing is I want to turn on the simulate type activity here to make it true. So if I go ahead and run my automation now, hopefully we start getting text this time. The web page successfully loads. And there you can see the K enter, but notice we got Tesla, there's Walmart. So we're actually getting the tickers look like they're all showing up, but notice the K enter there. That's again the reason why we cannot use the enter hotkey here. So I need to do a little cleaning up here. The bot did run, it ran successful. The only problem is this hotkey we cannot use at this point here. So we've got a couple different options that we can use. We could potentially bring in there is a hotkey activity. So I could bring in a send hotkey activity potentially here. I actually want to bring in a click activity instead. It's a good demonstration of click activity. We're going to have a few cases of this going on down the road. So look for UI automation element mouse and click. If you don't have it in your recents like I do up top here, we want this activity. Bring this one in immediately underneath after it types in the text. Again, make sure you deleted out the hotkey here so the search box now only contains the value of ticker. Or indicate element inside browser on the click activity, very similar to our type into that we had a moment ago. Go ahead and click on the link here. And I want to go up here to the top corner. Notice if I hover really carefully, I can simply grab the magnifying glass up here, the little search magnifying glass icon that's up here. If I click on it, make sure that's the only object that is selected up here in the corner. I want to click on it. Notice when it comes back to here, I should only have the little red box around the magnifying glass here. Again, great practices to get in here is first things first, check your selector out. This looks a little bit generic here. It might work, but I'm going to go into UI Explorer and poke around just a little bit more and see if we might not be able to build a slightly better selector here. Looks like UI Explorer is showing up on my other monitor, so let me drag it over. And first things first that I want to look at, as soon as I get to here, notice it's looking at the last element down here. There is this class search that looks kind of interesting. Maybe I've got potential there. I want to go up one more level and see if there's anything at the higher level. Notice this one even says button here, so we're actually trying to click a button. And AA name is always an excellent option, so I want to bring AA name in here. In order to bring this one in, I need to also bring a checkbox here. So AA name of search, it's of a type button here. We're talking about it being on the search form. I think this might be really good, so I want to go ahead and hit save here. Let me hit the highlight. Notice it's carried my selector forward. I'm going to do the highlight here. It's got it on the little magnifying glass. That looks good. I want to go ahead and save here. So the selector looks good. We want to then always set our wait for ready to complete. Make sure everything's set and ready to go before we attempt to click the button. And let's go ahead and see if this doesn't fix the issue that we just had. Another quick cleanup job here. Clean up the title here, say click. In this case, the search icon / button. And now this should get us company page by company page here. So I'm going to go ahead and save. Make sure IE is not running. It's currently running, so I want to close IE again. Let's rerun our automation and see if this has not improved our results. So again, our goal at this point, we should see it go company page by company page here. So Google should click the magnifying glass. Yeah, we're still not quite there. It did take me to Walmart's page. There's Twitter and the click. So we're getting closer. This might be another case where bringing that simulate click on the click event might also be a good activity. So here's Facebook. So it brought in a couple pages. We're getting closer. Let's go ahead on our click activity, say simulate click here, and see if this does not change any of our results. Go ahead and save, close IE one more time. And run our automation and see if we don't get each company page now. There's Google. Yeah, we obviously missed Google here. We got to Tesla. Looks like the bot might be a bit lost right here. Could not find the button here, so let's maybe look and see. Is there a bit more we might be able to do with our selector here? Maybe potentially we've got a button for search. Let's go back into UI Explorer again. Let's go back up to this top level here again and see if there aren't any additional things that we might be able to bring in. Let's see, parent name, parent ID. It's a submit button. This might be helpful too. Bring that in. So button search, parent ID, search form, parent name. Let's validate this one. Everything looks good. Don't think we need to worry about anything down here. We will go ahead and save this one. So just try to make this selector a bit more specific here. So go ahead and hit OK. Let's close our IE browser, and hopefully this time we're off and running. Let's see what type of results we get this time. Go ahead and run our automation here. Hey, that's looking a little bit better. Here's Google. See if we get Tesla. Here's Tesla going. See if it navigates to the page. And there's Tesla here. So this is looking better. So as you can see, a kind of a combination of playing around with the simulate click and simulate type, as well as modifying our selector on that final click activity, seems to have resolved our potential issue here. So it looks like we're successfully navigating through each of the company pages now. Knock on wood. And I say that, and I think I may have just jinxed myself. We're off on a page here. Just now brought us to just a search page. No doubt we've seen an improvement in performance here, but now we are off one page at the moment. We did not get down to Facebook. Facebook was there, it did not load. I'm going to try running it just one more time to see if we happen to get any better result here. As you can see, very trivial here, the particular behavior that we're seeing. So here's Google. And we should see Tesla. There's Tesla going in. We have Tesla now. And yes, Amazon. Looks good. In this case, Walmart should be next. There's Walmart. See if we get the page to load. Okay, there's Walmart's page, so that's good. We got Twitter and Facebook now. There's Twitter's page. Let's see if it loads. And then last but not least, let's see if we can get the final one of Facebook. There's Facebook. See if we get the mouse click here on Facebook. and we're navigating to Facebook. So I'm going to go with the second run was successful. I'm going to go ahead and stay with what we've got. The automation has ended. We have successfully navigated to each company page. Let's go ahead and keep moving now with our build. So now that we are successfully navigating to each company's respective page, this is where, when we're in our main logic, when we get especially down into RE framework later, thinking about each of the pages that we go to becoming a new XAML file. So obviously with the work that we've done, talking about multiple XAML files previously, this is an excellent opportunity for us to invoke a new XAML file. And this idea of a XAML file per page. So in this case, each page that we're talking about here is these quote overview pages. So looking at the Zax web page, each company's respective page, being able to extract the data from each of these pages, in a generic fashion, and our XAML file is written in such a way that it will work across all the company pages, always being able to extract the results that are needed. So going back to our requirements, getting the open value, 52-week high, market cap, and industry rank again. So first things first, let's go ahead and get the new XAML file started here. And the main takeaway here is having a separate XAML file is going to help with our testing and debugging of our automation. Instead of having to run through each of these ticker symbols every time we want to test our application, we can actually have a single file that will then extract and remove the data that's needed from here, and then return that information back to main, where we can resume doing all the necessary calculations and data manipulation that's being asked of us later on in our requirements here. So again, first things first, let's go back into Studio, go over to the project tab, and inside of the project tab here, let's do a right click and say add new sequence. What this is going to do, it's going to create a new XAML file that's right directly in line with the main.xaml file. When we get into our more sophisticated projects downstream, your production grade automations will actually add a new folder and group like XAML files in their respective folders, more or less thinking along the lines of which systems you might be automating against, and grouping XAML files per system in their own folder. But for this particular project, we're going to keep it simple. We're simply going to create a new sequence right in line with main. And the main reason being is we're only going to have this single XAML file here as part of our demonstration with this particular project. So go ahead and hit sequence here. It's going to prompt us for a name here. What do you want to call this file? The name of your XAML file is important to you as a developer. It's going to clue you in on what does this file do? Why does this XAML file exist? In this case, this one's sole purpose in life is to extract ticker results. It's going to go in on each company page and extract the results. Notice the location here, we don't necessarily have to concern ourselves with, but notice, just so you're aware, it's going to save it at the main parent folder level of our project here, again right next to main. If we had a subfolder in here, it'd be slash and whatever that subfolder is that we would be saving the XAML file into. In this case, that doesn't exist, so doesn't apply here. We'll see that later on down the road within the training. Extract ticker results, simply click create, and watch what happens here when we create a new XAML file. Again, it always opens up the new XAML file on a blank template here, not really even a template, but an empty sequence here so we can begin building. The habit I always try to get into anytime we create a new XAML file is always go back to the file in which we are calling or going to invoke or run that code from. So going back to extract ticker results, or excuse me, back to main, then back over here in the projects tab, the extract ticker results. I want this to show up immediately underneath the click activity here. So once the page gets loaded, then start extracting the content from the web page. So going into extract ticker results, We'll look at arguments here momentarily. What I want to first do is add an activity that we can actually work with one of our first arguments. So going back to our activities here, let's bring in another log message. I've got one here. You could start searching for log message. I'm going to bring log message across. Do an informational one here. I simply want to say begin extracting values for, end quote. Notice I don't have tickers. What I'm getting at here is arguments. I don't have any arguments defined yet, and I have no variables. So how do I know what ticker I'm currently processing right now and extract ticker results? We know inside main, ticker is right here. It's inside the for each loop. We need to be able to get this value of ticker into the extract ticker results here. So to be able to see this, that always implies the need for a new argument. So remember, arguments are the secret sauce, if you will, that allows us to pass variables between multiple XAML files. So in this case, taking ticker from main, sending it into extract ticker results. So that key right there, in, so in underscore current ticker. What's the current ticker? Not Ricker, about ticker. Current ticker, which one are we currently working on? It's inbound, the direction it's coming from main into extract ticker results, this very file. And of course, type string. So if I save here, you'll notice when I jump back to main, this is another reason why I like to bring the files in and invoke them ahead of time, because then you see this change live time as well. If I go into my import arguments here, you'll notice there's the in underscore current ticker that I just defined inside of extract ticker results. In current ticker here, I need to send in a value. We just said a moment ago, we want to send in ticker. So the value here being the variable ticker, taking ticker and putting it into the in current ticker variable here. So now when I run my automation, the extract ticker results will successfully display here. So let's go ahead and see that in action here. So I'm going to close my file, my web browser, go back to main and simply hit debug. Now we should see the results up here twice. We should see it, the initial one that we already have, but now we should see where it's now saying begin extracting values for in our log message. No other activity yet to this point. Be another good test to see if we successfully navigate through each of the company pages. So here's Google. There's Tesla. Looks like we're getting stuck again. Let's see what's going on from a UiPath point of view. Enter ticker symbol into search box. Writing text simulate is not supported with this element. Interesting. Let's go ahead and try. I'll try running one more time. I got the web browser closed now. Try running this one more time here. As much as I don't want to put a delay in, I'm pondering maybe needing to slow down the logic a bit more just to make sure the page is indeed 100% loaded before it does the typing in too. But Ideally, I want to try to refrain from the use of delay if at all possible. There's Tesla. I noticed Walmart already typed in. Okay, here's Walmart. No doubt we're having a little bit of technical issue here with the search box. Actually makes for a great demonstration though, as part of our tutorial, just the finickiness that selectors natively do have. Notice the Walmart page never officially loaded, it didn't look like. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Down the road, we may try to put an extra delay in. There's Twitter. Hopefully we get Facebook to load here. And Facebook does load. Yeah, it looks like the automation is waiting. Here's what I was really ultimately trying to get to a moment ago. Google, actually notice here Google's page did not, and Facebook, we never got into those, which is interesting. Begin extracting value for, so no doubt we were running into a bit of an issue. There's Twitter. Yeah, the rest of these downstream, doesn't look like we were successful in any of these actually. Oh, and you know why? I'm making a very poignant mistake here. Notice begin extracting value for, we never specified our value over here. So plus concatenate the value. Kind of hard for it to display what we want it to display when we did not tell it what to display. So we'll go back to our log message again. Begin extracting value for, and in this case, concatenating in underscore current ticker, the value that's been passed in from main. So save our file here. Let's try running this one more time. Yet again, another good test, but then ultimately trying to see the value show up in the log or in our output window of exactly the value being successfully passed in. So see what type of result we get here. So here's Google. Here's Tesla. See if we get the page to load. Tesla is indeed loading. That's good. Should get, I believe, Walmart. Looks like we might be getting into another issue here. Seems like not supported for this element again. So stop here. I think I do want to bring in a, just to see if this doesn't clean things up maybe just a bit more. I want to bring a delay activity in right here. The duration is denoted by hours, minutes. I want to tell it to delay for, tell it 5 seconds here. What I'm trying to really accomplish here is just make sure the web page is fully loaded and settled. I think there's a lot of background activity going on with the Zax web page now that might be interfering with the typing into capabilities. Kind of what my hypothesis is here. Notice all these other little pop-ups and such might be causing some potential interference. Let's allow the page to settle before typing is my theory here. Again, this is total, theoretical, trying to ensure the logic of the page processes as desired and expected here. We know we're close. We're running into kind of a goofy issue here. So at this point, there's our little delay. Wait 5 seconds here before we type in Google. Go ahead and press the search box here. So Google, this page, notice it's loading up. Notice there's all these little activities starting to show up around the screen, little pop-ups. Go ahead and type in Tesla now. Load the page. Again, we try to minimize the use of delays if at all possible, but sometimes, in a particular case like this may be unavoidable. We'll see if this improves the capability at all. So far, this is looking a little bit better. We got Amazon now. Here comes Walmart. Walmart's page is loaded. A little delay. We got Twitter. See if Twitter's page successfully loads. And last but not least, Facebook. And page is loaded. So knock on wood, maybe that delay was enough to slow things down just enough to where the page is running a bit cleaner and happier. If I go back to Studio, here's it. Again, what we were trying to get a few moments ago. There's Google. This is now inside of our new extract ticker results, so we know we're getting there. Tesla, Tesla, Amazon, Amazon, Walmart, Walmart, Twitter, Twitter, Facebook, and Facebook. So that's looking great at this point in time. We can now begin moving forward with our extract ticker results. And before we get too much further down the road here, recall we got 4 values that we need to extract out. And you heard me already allude, we want to get this data back into main. There's a couple different ways we could play this out. We could create 4 new variables here. I shouldn't say variables, I should say arguments. 4 new arguments here to send the saved or extracted results from the page. So in this case, the open value, 52-week high, market cap, and the industry rank values here. I could again create 4 new arguments, 1 per each, or, and maybe a slightly better way, and yet again an opportunity to work through some of the previous lessons that we've done to this point, I recommend creating a new argument here in the form of a dictionary. And it's going to take all of, the dictionary is going to hold all of the extracted values and send those values back to main so we can finish our calculations based on the data that we've extracted off of each company page. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and create a new argument here. This is going to be outbound. We're sending the data out of extract ticker results, sending them back into main. So out underscore, I'll call it ticker values, the values that are being extracted from each ticker. The direction here again being outbound. We're sending the data out of extract ticker results. If you don't change this direction here, when we go to run our full automation back in main, that data will never make its way back out of extract ticker results. And then our argument type, obviously, we're talking about it being the form of a dictionary. So browse for types. Look for dictionary. It's not already in our list. Again, look for MS Core lib, Microsoft Core library, dictionary T key T value. We're going to have a dictionary of string of strings. The key being what is the value being taken off the page, so open, 52-week high, market cap, etc. And then the value being the actual text that's on the web page that corresponds with the value that we are indeed extracting. So a string of strings. If you click off there, you'll notice string of strings is here. Go ahead and hit save on our file here, and hopefully this implies go back to main. We've now added a new argument. We need to be able to connect the argument back on main. So if we scroll down, you'll see it's glowing orange again. Go into the import arguments here. We now need to be able to, as I say, catch the value. The data is coming out of extract ticker results. We're now looking at inside of main. We need a variable to hold, in this case, the dictionary that's coming back to us. So right here in line, we can do a Control K. I want to call this one DITC for dictionary ticker values. Press enter, you're going to get the old dreaded blue dot here saying that it's not been defined. We're defining it on the fly here, so it's okay. Notice my variables here, the variable dictionary ticker values is not defined yet. As soon as I hit OK here, it shows up in the list. Dictionary string of strings. Set the scope to the highest level here, process stock tickers. I go back and import arguments just so you can see it. It is nice and happy now because the variable has officially been defined. Kind of a little buggy, quirky thing inside Studio as to why that behavior happens. So now at this point, we can get the values that have been extracted from the web page back into main. And here after a bit, we're going to come back and connect the dots as to how that particular behavior functions. So jumping back into extract ticker results. First thing that we need to do, anytime we bring in a dictionary, we always need to initialize it before we can begin working with it. So first things first here, let's bring in a assign activity simply to initialize our new dictionary, get it prepared to be used. So in the assign activity here, say out underscore, there's our ticker values. And then on this side, the way we declare a new dictionary, it's exactly that, new dictionary. Notice of, it's kind of prompting us here. If I do an open parenthesis and type in of string, in this case string, this needs to match what we have here, the argument type that we've defined the variable to be. So in this case, a dictionary of string of strings. So string of string, new dictionary of string, comma, string. It's more commonly referred to as simply a dictionary of string of strings. Again, always make sure you update your title. Obviously, this one's a bit of a more cryptic thing. We simply want to say init the out ticker values dictionary. It's a new list of values, the values that we're getting ready to extract. So that's cool there. Go ahead and save our work here so we don't lose anything. We're actually at the first point. We are ready to extract now our first value. We got a spot that we can save it, being in our out ticker values dictionary. The first one, again, that we're being asked to look at is the open value. So go ahead and make sure it doesn't matter what company page you are on right now. Again, this is where we want this logic to work generically across all company pages, all ticker pages or values. Obviously, Facebook being the last one that I'm assuming all of this has processed. That's what I've got on the screen. But know that you can do this on any page. We want to go after this exact value here. In this case, on Facebook, today it's 272 even. So going back to extract ticker results, there is another new activity here called get text. And notice here, I want to get the one down here under element control, get text. It tells you right here, extracts a text value from a specified UI element. If I bring this activity in, say indicate on screen, notice it'll go into its little UI vision type mode, showing us what UiPath can actually see here. As I hover over the 272, notice it doesn't let me get directly down onto, I can get to open, but I don't want open's text, I want the actual number. It looks like this is the best I'm able to do here. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on open here. This is the only way I'm able to get to the 272 even on this particular record. Yours obviously is going to vary based on company and the specific day that you're trying to process data. So from here, same thing, edit your selector here. Notice very, very generic selector at this point. We need to get very specific here. We need to get down to the open value. So go into UI Explorer. There's no other options up here. Going back into UI Explorer. See what type of results we get here. We want to look for things that start honing us into open value. Notice there's the actual inner text. This is what the get text is actually going to extract. It's going to get the inner text value. So this is good. We know that we're going to get our 272 back, but there's nothing from a selector point of view here that's really honing us into talking about anything around the lines of open value. This idea of stock activity is a bit intriguing though. And what I'm looking at here is it's going to help us ensure that we're in this, going back to the UI, stock activity matching to here, this particular column or mini table that exists here. So I do want to turn that particular, back into UI Explorer here. I want to go ahead and turn parent ID back on. I like this idea of stock activity being called out. But I want to go up a level here and see if we start seeing anything that starts honing us into anything talking about open. And right here, remember, AA name is always an awesome opportunity. I need to make sure I turn this row on. AA name here. Let's see here. We got stock activity again here. This looks good. The one problem here with open, we had that 272 at the end. We can turn that into a dynamic selector, and not a dynamic selector, but a wildcard character here to say, as long as the AA name starts with open, I don't really care what the dollar amount is at the very end. Go ahead and turn that on that way. So anything open, again, looking at stock activity again, may or may not need it here. I'm going to go ahead and leave it there and see what type of results we get. The other major thing, I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to hit highlight, make sure we're still on open, which we are. So that looks good. The other important thing to note here from a selector point of view, we want our title here to come down to just being Zach's in this case. So I want to put a wildcard here on Zach's. And go ahead and hit OK here. So our selector now should look pretty good. I've got the open value. We're good there. Our wait for ready again, let's always make sure that that is turned on to complete. Then the last most important feature here of our get text, really two more things. One here being the out argument. Where do we want to save our results? So in this case, remember we have our dictionary here. So I'm going to do out underscore ticker values. Since this is the first time key is string, we can call this whatever we desire. In this case, I'll call this one open value. So right there, out ticker values, open value. This is also an awesome opportunity to call out. It's a good practice here to begin using a document like Notepad, just so you have a reference to all of your keys here. So I've got open value. Open value is going to store, obviously, the open value. Just to give an example here, was it 272, I think was the value here. So this becomes our dictionary. Ticker values, open value is the first one that we've got. This will mean a lot more to us here later. So just simply go ahead and build in Notepad or Notepad++, whatever, little text editor of your choosing. Go ahead and get yourself a little document like this going, a little reference lookup as to what all of our keys are in our dictionary. I don't even need to say extracted, just hold the open value. Minimize that. Let's bring in a log activity. Log message here, immediately underneath. Say informational and say open value is, and we want to say in this case out ticker value, open value. This text here, open value right here, needs to match identically to our open value that we have right here. If there's any difference there, this will not work. The other quick little thing I wanted to update, I just realized I said there was two things I wanted to update on the get text. The other one here talking about the get open value text right here. So if I save my automation here, this is again an awesome opportunity validation to creating a separate single XAML file here, so you're able to test a single page at a time. Notice the web page is up and running. Inside of Studio, I've got the ability here to debug the current file. So simply play here, run. This will be our first test to see if our get text value is indeed working and behaving the way we desire. Yeah, it looked like it did. Notice my output window, there's the 272. This is going to be blank because we're not passing anything into our in argument for current ticker, so this is fine. What we're really going after here is to see if the open value is indeed working the way we expected. This is where I also like to change pages. So I'm going to manually navigate over to Walmart's page. I want to test to see if the selector is generic enough yet specific enough that I'll now get the 144.20 in this case, the open value for Walmart. So if I run my automation here, I should get, there's the 144.20. So this is telling me that my selector is generic enough that it works across multiple company pages, but it still specifically is looking at the open value. Which from here we should be good to go. Now it's really just a matter of repeating this process again and again for each of the various activities that we're trying to extract off of the page. So get open text being the first one. The next one we want to hone in on is the 52-week high value. So going back into Studio, get text again. Say indicate on screen. I brought my notes to the foreground, so I got to do an F2 here. This allows me to quickly bring the IE browser back into the foreground. A little 3-second clock starts when you're doing that, then it allows you to come back into the vision mode here. 52-week high, notice it's the same exact problem. Make sure you're doing high and not low. 52-week high, click. Look at your selector. I bet we run into the same exact issue. Notice the selector looks nice and generic again. Open in UI Explorer. Opens up a mother monitor again. Drag it across. Bring in the stock activity again. Go up a level. It appears the selector is exactly the same as what we had before. Bring in the AA name and the parent ID again. Important things here again, make sure you set a wildcard on the 52-week high, as well as the company name, taking it right down to just Zax. Save. Go ahead and highlight, make sure it stays on 52-week high. It looks good. Go ahead and hit OK. Set your wait for ready to complete. Update your title here to say get 52-week high text. And again, on the other side in the output, out underscore ticker values, I'm going to say 52 WK high. Make sure you grab your text there. Put this on your clipboard. Then what was this one? No, it really doesn't matter. I'm just going to put a random number in here. Holds the 52-week high value. So again, I could put the word value here. If I change it there, I need to make sure I also update it over here. 52-week high value, just to be consistent, I called the open high value, or the open value, staying with 52-week high in this case. Again, these are names specific to you and your, what you're calling it in your particular automation. There's no rhyme or reason. It becomes important though when you try to get the value back out. It has to be exact. So I'm bringing in another log message here as the informational, just like we did before. Open value. This time I want to say 52-week high value is, and in this case, out ticker values. In this case, the exact one I had in 52-week high, 52-week high value. Make sure this is exact here, what shows up right there. 52-week high value, 52-week high value. So simply saying 52-week high value is, if I save and run or debug my file here, I should now see both values show up in the output window for Walmart. You want to make sure the values are exact too. So in this case, 153.66, 52-week high, 153.66. So we are indeed getting the right value here. I want to go back to Facebook again. I'm going to simply hit the back browser. See if it'll take me back to Facebook. It's thinking here. All right, Facebook page is loading. In this case, 52-week high should be 304.67. So see how I'm testing these out, just making sure they work and they work across multiple company pages at the same time, and making sure the values are indeed accurate. So there's 304.67, 304.67. Go ahead and update here, 304.67. These dollar amounts aren't as important, but just kind of a visual cue so you know what type of data is being saved on in our notepad here. So it looks like our first two values we're successfully getting. We need to get the market cap value next. So going back into Studio, we continue to repeat the process. Get text, indicate on screen. I'm back here again. F2 starts a 3-second clock, allows me to click manually onto IE and a market cap here. Notice it lets me actually click on the raw text here. You can do this. This would work. Notice if I hover out a bit more, it'll highlight the entire row. The reason I want to do the entire row here is just to make sure my selectors are consistent across the board. I'm going to go out on a limb and make an assumption that the selector here will match my other selectors that I have above, similar to what we've done. Doing the inner one, you're going to find if you go that route, you're ultimately going to get into a similar type scenario, but your selector is going to be slightly different. So it's more of a comfort factor. I look at it as that it's keeping your selectors truly in a uniform state. That's why I'm actually going to click at that higher level here, the entire market cap. And here's what I'm talking about. When I go into my selector here, go back into UI Explorer, showing up on my other monitor again, drag it over. Here's what I'm getting at. See, same values here as we had before. Go up a row, click. There's the AA name and the stock activity again. And it's simply a matter of updating the market cap here. And again, the company name right there. So it's the exact same selector that we've been working with up until this point. So save, highlight, we bring back the entire market cap value here. You want to hit OK here. Set your wait for ready again to complete. I want to just peer up here, and yeah, I set it on my last one. Update your title. In this case, get market cap value text. Value here being out ticker values. Market cap values, holding that same terminology. I want to copy market cap value text here. Come back on my little clipboard here. We know that's going to be a dollar amount. Holds the market cap value. So right after that, bring in a log message. Informational. Again, just call this one market cap value is, let's say out, ticker values, the key being the one that we just had above right there, market cap value. All right. Last but not least, first off, save, debug your current file. Let's make sure that we're getting the market cap value here. Market cap value shows up as 778.04B. Going back to the web page, that indeed appears to be correct. Let's go back to Walmart. You can go to any, you know what? Instead of Walmart this time, let's bring up Google. While that's loading, I'm going to update my value here just to be a bit more representative of what we're seeing on the actual page. Looks like Google's page has loaded. So Google, up into the trillions of dollars here. If I run my automation, I should get that entire value back. 1,000 billion, obviously talking a trillion now. There it is, 1185.02. That appears to be accurate, and it is. So we're in great shape there. All right, last but not least, we need to get the industry rank text off of the web page. So talking this value here. Again, it doesn't necessarily matter what page I'm on. I want to do this one from Google. I've been doing everything from Facebook up until this point. We're still going to bring in and get text here. Indicate on screen. Notice it allows you to get into each individual item here. This is excellent news. This is an awesome thing for us, being able to get these. But I want to intentionally make this slightly more challenging or difficult here. And the reason being is to purely demonstrate sometimes selectors aren't always this clean, neat, and tidy. Sometimes we're stuck with something that looks like this. So if you move your mouse out here to the far right edge, you'll notice this entire div on the web page, this entire area or section of the web page is being selected. Sometimes this is the best we can do from a selector point of view. And I want to be able to demonstrate that in our tutorial here of, how do you handle a situation in which text, can't be extracted, obviously given this particular case at this very explicit finite level or similar to what we had seen down below. Sometimes, again, this being the best we're able to do. So trying to have an opportunity to present this data manipulation, as we call it, type scenario to how can we get specific elements out of the web page here, given the fact that this is the most specific that we can get down to. So go ahead and make sure you're out here on the far right to where it's highlighting the entire box, the entire div, the entire section of the web page here. Make sure you're not doing it at the higher level here. Make sure it's just the industry rank here, like is depicted on my screen here. Once you have this entire box like mine, go ahead and click. You'll notice it brings you back an image here. Let's go ahead and peer into our selector here. This looks to be a bit ugly. Let's go back into UI Explorer, see if we can clean this one up a bit more as well. Inside of here, is there anything that starts talking about industry rank? Guess what? We got an AA name right off the bat that's talking about the industry rank. Always, if you get the chance, turn CSS off. There may be a time where it's needed, but hopefully just making this a wildcard industry rank all the way to the end here, getting rid of all the text all the way down. Look at all the text that's coming back here. Simply delete everything down here to the end. There's the values that we're ultimately after right there. Take it all the way back to the very end. Industry rank star and the AA name. We're talking the quote ribbon here. There's the text that we're going to get back. The industry rank text is right there, so that's looking good. You know what? This class here has industry rank in it as opposed to the quote ribbon. Oh, it looks like I just lost my, that's all right, we can do this. Let's bring it back to here. Industry rank and star. You know what, I want to even clean this up a little bit more. Take it to where this just says industry rank. You know what, let it be on either side is fine. AA name class. The last important one up here, make this an easy one to forget. Make sure it works across all company pages again. Go ahead and hit save here. Hit highlight, make sure it's still on. That looks good. It's got exactly what we're looking for. Hit OK here. Again, tell it wait for ready to complete. Quick double check. I did it on the last one as well. It's good. Change our caption here. Say get industry rank text. Wait for ready is turned on. We need to be able to save this value here. Out ticker values, we'll simply call this one industry rank. Grab your value here, add your key as we have it defined here, back into here. We're just going to say, for now, lots of text holds all the industry rank text. We're going to obviously have some cleaning up to do here. This is where we're getting ready to head next. But for now, there's a lot there. It's all the stuff as industry rank is called out here. Let's bring in another log message activity. Let this one be informational. Let our message be, quote, industry rank text is, and obviously here out ticker values are key being industry rank, and we are good to go right here. Go ahead and hit save. Run your current file here, debug your current file here, see if we're getting any of our results the way we desire or intend here. Notice in our output window here, we have a pile of junk, I'm going to call it. But the goodness is, look down here at the very bottom, we've got the two exact lines that we're interested in right here, getting the industry and industry rank values extracted from all of this text. So the next question becomes, how do we begin extracting out all these various values? What we want to do here is a neat little trick. We get into what we call string manipulation or data manipulation here, trying to ultimately get to these last two values. An easy way to do this is to use what's known as the intermediate window. And the way I try to do this here is by setting a breakpoint on our log message here. Right after we extract the text, set a breakpoint. In this case, we got our log message here. We can stop the code here for a minute, and it allows us the opportunity to actually play around with the data. So what I want to be able to do here is go ahead and run our file again, get it to stop on the breakpoint. Then we've got the opportunity to open up the intermediate window and begin playing around with the data that's been extracted. So just so you can see it up here, OutTicker values, the raw value. So we can see we've got all the data. There's the industry rank text that we extracted. So it's sitting here. If I bounce over to the intermediate window, this allows us to play with the data in live time. Notice Studio is currently up and running and executing right now. It's waiting to execute this log message that we're sitting on this breakpoint here. But I can now put a question mark, say OutTicker values, put industry rank, and press enter. Notice it prints out all of the text that is inside of industry rank here. Again, our goal is to get to these very values down here at the very bottom. What we can use, and what we'll oftentimes use when we're dealing with data manipulation, is a function called split. Split allows us to break strings, and obviously this is strings, it's text, into its individual separate pieces based on a common delimiter. Notice here the delimiter in this case being each individual line. So the new line characters that show up at the end of each and every single individual line here. So if I hit up arrow and type in .split, I can say right here, split each of the lines based on what's known as the new line character. So I'm going to tell it, open curly bracket here, VB CRLF. This stands for carriage return line feed. Notice it's got the closing bracket for me. I'm going to do a comma here, and I want to say string split options dot remove empty entries, and then we got the closing parentheses here at the end. If I hit enter at this point, this gets a bit ugly, a bit messy, but you'll notice what this has done is it's turned it into a 9. In my case, depending on what company you're on, you may have some various elements that are a bit different, but I've got a 9-item array right here. You'll notice each of these elements down here at the end are in their respective spots. So if I do this and then specify down here element number 9, which would be 8, I believe, and press enter, you'll see there's the industry rank. Notice there is a blank space. No, there isn't. I take that back. We eliminated it. So if I go back 1, there's my other value right here. But you heard me say just a moment ago, we don't necessarily have them in the good news is they're always in the very last 2 spots, but we don't necessarily know how long our arrays might be. So we need to be able to use an array.length type function here. So right here, notice there is a capability of doing a .length here. Gives us the 9 that we had up here, but you can see how this is starting to get really messy. One thing that I recommend that we do here is we split the array into its various parts or pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my automation here for just a moment. But first thing first I want to do is I want to make sure I have the split here. I want to copy this to my clipboard. The problem is once we stop our bot, the intermediate window goes away. Unfortunately, I can't easily get back to it. So I want to go ahead and copy this value. The good news is when we get back to here, we'll be able to see this here. This logic doesn't absolutely disappear, but it makes it a bit more challenging to use the values as we need to incorporate it into our automation. So copy this value on your clipboard, this being the one that splits the array into its pieces, or splits a string into its pieces. I want to bring in a multiple assign activity here. I think looks like I don't have it in the list here, so we got to look for it. Multiple assign. It's down here at the very bottom, the way I searched for it. Bring this in between the get industry rank text and our log message here. What I want to do is define a new variable here. I want to be able to store all the pieces of industry rank into its own array. And I want to call this one industry rank parts. It's the parts of the array. So industry rank parts, all the individual parts of the array. Obviously, this implies that I'm dealing with an array, so make sure your variable type here becomes an array of strings. So string array. What I want to do here is I want to say industry rank parts equals, and then the very text that's on my clipboard, there's where it splits it into its various parts and pieces. This multiple assign, we can rename it here and simply say extract industry rank text and industry text. That's what it's going to do. We're going to have, the reason I brought in multiple sign, we're going to obviously be able to parse this out a bit more. Go ahead and leave this breakpoint here, run your bot. Now you'll notice we'll have an array. It's going to be a lot cleaner to work with than what we were dealing with just a moment ago. So here we go. Notice we're back. Instead of this, notice I can now simply say industry rank parts dot length. This entire line here has simply become just that. And then obviously I can also say, with what we had before, I could do 8 and obviously 9's not right because I'm beyond the array, the 7 here. Talking about the 7 and 8 that I had here. Those are the two values there. But I want to make sure that I don't use a hard-coded value here. I want to play off of the length of my array. So I'm going to copy this. Notice it's always the last two. The length being 9, but notice with zero-based indexing, I got to tell it to do length minus 1 here. And then if I do a minus 2, see what I get here? I get my final two values that I need. So I'm going to copy both of these to my clipboard. Take advantage that I got Notepad here. I want to paste in our values here. Obviously, this becomes the ones that I need to include. And actually, one thing I noticed here, I got some white space showing up here. Maybe a good practice before we go too far, I want to add a .2 trim. This gets rid of the extra space. So it's a -1. Let's do a -2 dot trim and enter. The dot trim is, again, all about getting rid of that extra little bit of white space. I want to copy these, paste these here. Notice now the white space is gone. So just a little cleanup job there. I can now go back, let's go ahead and stop our automation. And I can go back to a multiple assign now. Let's add 2 more lines, 1 for each. Let's do industry. Let's go ahead and do industry rank first. So this is the ranking here. I'm going to grab this text, copy. Now in this case, it's going to be out ticker values, industry rank. Let me get that one right, industry rank. Again, that's the value we had a minute ago, and simply paste from the clipboard what we have right here. So that's industry rank, the last one being out underscore ticker values. In this case, it needs to be industry. This is a new one here. Industry being this value here, taking the expression that we just wrote, copy that to the clipboard, and paste that value in right there. And we should no longer have any errors. Since industry rank was already used here, we don't need another log message on it. but industry is new. So let's bring in another log message here. Set this one as informational. We could steal our message from above, paste it, get rid of rank here, and just say industry text is. This is also a good point too to call out. Copy this value, make sure it now is here. So we have industry rank and industry. It's no longer this. Industry rank looks something like this right now. See what we've officially done? We've replaced it. Hold the industry rank. And industry being this right here. Simply holding the industry text. And we don't need this anymore, so I can delete this out on Notepad. But again, making sure we have a recap listing of all of the various keys. We can go ahead and clear this breakpoint here. I want to do that down below in the breakpoints and delete. If we now run our automation here outright, we should only get those two values back and lose all the excessive text that we had just a moment ago. Notice, make sure everything lines up. Your industry rank here being the percentage, and the industry text being the actual industry here, internet services. An awesome opportunity here. Everything looked good there. Let's change. I don't think I picked on Twitter yet today. Change companies here. Make sure you are indeed getting the successful logic that is desired. Notice this page is even a bit slow to run outside the box. So that's probably explaining some of the issues we've seen from earlier today. Go ahead and run our automation now that the company page has changed, just to make sure that we are indeed successfully extracting all of the values. Yeah, it looks good. We got the new percentages here. Make sure bottom 24%, 194, 255, internet software. Making sure that we are indeed getting the values here. Internet software 194. So everything from a data extraction perspective appears to be working as expected. So open value, 52-week high market cap, and we did get all the text, and then we've specifically narrowed it down to the very text that we ultimately desired. So next, we're able to get into our various tasks down here. We're talking about needing to remove the word industry from the industry rank line. There's a couple ways we can do this. We'll go ahead and keep things simple in our automation here. Notice we've got industry right here. There is actually a very quick and simple, easy way that we can do this. If we go into our expression editor to where we're extracting out the text for industry, notice this is the one again for industry, hitting the three little dots here. We've got the, notice here in our output window, industry : we can do what's known as a dot replace here. Notice here it says old value. What's the old value? In double quotes is a string. We simply say industry, put in a quote, and go ahead and include the extra space. Notice it says industry : space, and then it starts the value. So get rid of that extra little space. Industry : space, comma here. What's the new value? The new value is going to be two double quotes side by side saying delete. Get rid of all the text, including spaces. We don't want any value here. That in and of itself alone will get rid of industry rank text. And it's probably wise to put in a annotation here. Also remove the word industry. Be very specific here. Industry from the industry value, just so we know this is where that code is at. Otherwise, look, just looking at it, you have no idea that it's doing that. So it's adding an additional detail that we're removing the word industry right there in line as it goes into update industry. So if we debug our current file, industry should now be gone from the text simply by doing the replace right there. You'll notice now simply text is internet software. So the replace function has performed exactly the way we desire, which means we're done with the very first task right there. The next thing here, compute the percent difference from 52-week high based on the open value. We can actually do, this is where it's starting to get kind of gray. Obviously, we're starting to do a little bit, maybe too much in our file here. But obviously from a debugging perspective, it's making things a bit easier. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to add logic. You know, all of a sudden our extract ticker results is extracting, but also starting to do some calculations directly within. Obviously, we could pass all, you know, this data is getting passed back to main. We could be doing these calculations over inside of main, or, you know, in this particular case, we're going to keep them inside here, obviously making testing and debugging a bit easier as well. So the next thing we want to do is compute this 52-week high percentage from 52-week high value. So this is going to be a new item that we're going to have at this point. So we could include it in here, you know, in this multiple assign. This one's really specific to that industry ranked text. So I think it's better that we bring in a new assign activity to handle this calculation. In this case, the assign, this is going to be to compute percent from 52-week high. So what I was really trying to allude to here a second ago, there's always multiple ways to accomplish tasks when we get into developing in Studio. It needs to be what ultimately makes the best sense for our automation. We don't want to get into this file and get into, you know, a lot of you know, new type calculations. You know, we're leveraging values specific to a company right now, so you don't want to get into dealing with, you know, multiple cross, you know, company type logic here. This is all specific to this particular single company that we're processing. So that's how it works. You know, so really, ultimately, what I'm trying to get at is keep the logic in these as specific as possible to what it is, you know, the action that you're trying to accomplish or obtain. So right here, we need to be able to store our new value here. So out ticker values as a new key here, we'll say percent from 52 WK again high, percent from 52-week high. Copy our value here. This is a new key. So I want to update my spreadsheet, or not my spreadsheet, my little notepad list here. This obviously is going to be some type of percentage like this. Holds the percent from 52-week high. So this is, again, just kind of a denotion of what it is each of these is holding. So percent from 52-week high. We now need to bring in the crazy expression here. So I'm going to open up the value box just so we can see how this plays out. So right here, if I go back to the requirements, you'll notice there is a website link here that we can pull up and take a look at. I'll walk us through step by step what all of these calculations are. It looks like it's opening on my other monitor over here. Here we go. Calculator soup talking about, you know, 52-week high, just so we can maybe get a visual of what this looks like. Playing with Twitter here. Notice the 52-week high value was 56.11. The open value was 54.24, so obviously very close. If I hit calculate here, you'll notice the difference is only 3.3%. This is the value that we want to have computed in our automation using this formula. So you notice this gets a bit messy, if you will. So try to make things simple and easy here. So how do we do this? So notice, again, I pulled this up from the assign side right here. Open up value. So we already told it we're going to put it in our new key. We need to build that expression here. So go back to your pre-algebra and algebra days. Order of operations are going to become important to us here, trying to get the formula built. So the very first thing that we're looking at, start small. The easiest way to ever build any complex expression like this is to do it in small chunks. So you notice V1 I use for the 52-week high value, V2 being the open value. So look at this, very first one, V1 minus V2. Do the simple subtraction here. So recall, everything is inside of our dictionary right here. So our first one being, you know what, we'll even do this, just spell it out. We'll come back in. Take each value, subtract it from one another. We want to take our 52-week high value first. So copy there. Here's where our notepad finally comes into play. Paste in the 52-week high value. And then we want to subtract it from the open value. So that looks good, other than you notice there is a blue dot screaming at us over there on the side saying you got a problem. We're looking at it here, 52-week high value minus the open value right here. This is complaining here because we're dealing with string, and obviously it's looking at it to be double. You know, it's wanting to do a numerical calculation here. So we need to typecast our strings into numbers to make, remember, strings can't be computed against. You can't do mathematical operations against them. So we need to typecast our strings, CDVL, convert the string to a double. Same thing on this side, CDVL, CDVL, there we go. And close that down. And you'll notice the error has now gone away. We're doing the subtraction that is required here as part of our formula. So the top part here is done. Notice it says to divide by then this crazy little calculation here. So that means we need to put in a division. So that's done by this slash here. Going back to our example here, it's now taking the same value but adding them. So to keep things simple here, I want to take the exact value that we had before, paste it over on this side, and then change the subtraction to addition. Now I've got this part here, but I've also got, as I was talking about, the order of operations now becoming a problem. Technically, if I did not change anything to this point, this right here would be the first two values that would be computed before it would look at the outer values. Division always comes before addition and subtraction. PEMDAS, parentheses, exponents, multiply, add, subtract, divide, add, subtract, in that order. So the way I have to do this, just like we did in our pre-algebra algebra days, you need to be able to wrap each of these in parentheses. So these parentheses here dealing with the order of operations. It's going to say do the subtraction first, do the addition next, then take the final computation of each of those respectively and then divide them, is how that calculation is being done. I'll widen this up so we have plenty of room here because obviously we got more to do. So at this point, I've got the top part working perfect. We've got the addition. We now need to divide by 2 this bottom part here. After the addition, we need to do a division by 2. We want this to be inside of this calculation here. So coming in right after our little division, or right after our parenthesis here, let's do a divide by 2 right there. But then again, we want to make sure this addition happens first. So I need to wrap that in another round of parentheses. So do this addition first before doing that division, and then take your total result here, divide it by what we have over on this side. And that takes care of that divide by 2 down here on the bottom. Notice the very last thing here, it's going to do the multiply by 100. It's going to take it from its true decimal form here and bring it into more of an actual percentage for us. So after we do all of that, we want to multiply, which is done via an asterisk, multiplied by 100. I want to make sure that this happens at the very end. So I'm going to wrap that in parentheses as well. Just guarantees, obviously it wouldn't necessarily be totally required there, but making sure that this truly happens at the very end. Then another thing, notice on their example here, they've got this really crazy percentage here. Let's clean this up a bit more. So going out here to the very beginning, I want to type in math.round. If I do an open parenthesis, come all the way out here to the end and put comma 2, this is going to ensure that I only get 2 decimal places. So math.round, open parenthesis, take our entire expression, do a comma 2, will ensure that my number now gets rounded to 2 decimal places. Another thing to denote here, notice they do have a percentage symbol added here. We want to make sure we have the percent symbol as well. Right now we don't have a percent symbol. So if we do a concatenation, notice here though it's complaining we've got a number trying to be converted to a string. So we need to, at the very end of here, convert all that back to text. So convert it back to a string, all the value that was computed. And simply at the end, add a percent symbol here. This should be the final expression that gets us to where we need to be. We'll validate this in just a second. Again, make sure your keys match exactly to the keys that you have defined in your automation. If you didn't define them exactly like I have here, you'll run into problems. So double check your key values. Make sure those are exactly the same as what you have in yours, if yours happens to be any different from what I have here. Go ahead and click OK. Let's bring in a log message here. Say informational here. I'm going to grab my entire value here, be able to repurpose it. And let's say right here, percent from 52-week high is, just so we can actually see our results right here. Percent from 52-week high. Again, out ticker values, percent from 52-week high. Go ahead and save, and let's run and see if our number happens to match what is on the calculator, the web page, to what we actually computed here. Percent from 52-week high, 3.339, and 3.339 would make sense because we got the 9 here and we're rounding 2 decimals. So it looks like the percent from 52-week high value is indeed computing correctly here. So we've got that value working. All right. So with that said, we have successfully completed the second task here. The next thing that we need to do is determine which ticker has the largest and the smallest open value and denote accordingly. So this implies a major difference from what we've had on the 2 lines above. We at this point have not really looked at all the values collectively brought together across the board. So this implies we're pretty much at a ending point to our new XAML file here. We need to start moving our logic back into the main XAML file here so we can start looking across the board at all the data that we have aggregated across the board. So go ahead and move yourself back to main. So everything we've done to this point has happened inside of here. Recall we were bringing the data back to us. Now ticker values coming out of extract ticker results. So all that data that we were getting here now lives inside of main, specifically inside of the dictionary ticker values dictionary. But we also at this point realize we need to be able to store this value across all companies. So with that said, we need to consider what data types do we have available, or objects available to us that could store, values similar to what we have in the dictionary, column type data, but then obviously having a row for each company that we are ultimately processing. Hopefully, as I'm kind of verbally articulating that, this notion or idea of having a data table would hopefully be what you're thinking would be an awesome object to use at this point, and you would be absolutely correct. So what I want to do is go to the very top of our project and bring in a build data table. I want to bring this in at the very, very beginning of our process. Build data table here. Again, this data table holding all of the values that we are going to be extracting from the website. So I'm going to open this up a bit so we have a bit more real estate here. Again, UiPath tries to be helpful to us to give us a sample data table. Let's make sure we clean this up and start with a fresh one. So first things first, remove the sample row. Hit the little remove there. Remember, this one will always stay because it's the row that we can begin adding data. In our case, we're going to do that through the data extracting that we're doing. So we won't be messing with that. Delete our little sample columns with the little remove column up there in the corner. And we're really at a point here we want to use our idea to the spreadsheet, so we know that data tables and Excel spreadsheets kind of fall into line. So we want to make sure that we start lining up our values here. So I'm going to put this on my other monitor to be able to walk us through each of the columns that need to be added to our automation. So I want to go ahead and close that. We know that that's working. Back to Studio here. Open up data table. Our first column being, in this case, ticker symbol. And remember, this becomes important. If we're going to export this data table out to an Excel spreadsheet, these column names become the text that actually shows up on the column name of that spreadsheet. So we want this to be human readable in nature. So set it up as a string. So we're cool there. Go ahead and hit OK. And we'll continue down the line here. Open value. This is going to be important that we save this one as a double. We want this to have the decimal value. Notice double is not in my list here. So I need to browse for double. It again holds decimal values. So type in double here. Look for a Microsoft Core library. There's Microsoft Core, and type of double here. Microsoft Core lib, Microsoft Core library system, and double. We want to be able to hold the number numerically in this case. And the reason we want to do that, especially with the open value, we want the ability to be able to sort this data table to bring the highest and the lowest open value to the foreground. So if this was done as a string, we would lose that capability to mathematically compute, to be able to sort mathematically the values from greatest to smallest and vice versa. So that's why this is extremely important that the data type here for open value becomes type double. Bring in the next column being 52-week high. This should also be a double. I don't think we're going to do any data manipulation or sorting per se, but if you ever wanted that capability, it's also going to be a numeric value. The next column after 52-week high being market cap value. This one we can't set as a double, and notice down here it's actually in my output window, market cap value. It looks like a number, but notice it has character after a B. So being able to have the character value would not save in a numeric value, so we have to leave market cap value as string. If we ever had a business requirement that required that we did something with market cap value from a true numerical point of view, we'd have to do some additional logic to convert the B and the M for million to their respective values, so we'd have them in a numeric type notation that we could do some data manipulations with. So market cap value, go ahead and leave it as a string. So market cap value, industry rank, we know is text. So industry rank as text, good there. Industry rank, the next one being industry. What industry are they in? Also as text, so as string. Industry, the last one, not the second to last one here, percent from 52-week high. Remember, we had the percentage symbol on this one. That's a character value that can't be saved in a numeric value, so that has to come in as a string. So again, if we wanted to do some type of numerical type calculation, we might have to remove the percent symbol and concatenate it on at a later point down the road. So all varies on the logic of our automation. So our last column being the min/max, but min/max open, we could say open value, and obviously this one's going to be of type text. This becomes the data table that we need to save. One thing I always highly recommend here is to take a screenshot of our data table here. I'm pulling up Paint. If you got Snagit or other similar type programs on your machine, simply go ahead and paste those values. At this rate, grab the data table, kind of my Snagit here, doing it manually through Paint, do a copy. This becomes my data table. I want to be able to reference these column names later on down the road. So similar to what we got going on with Notepad, an easy way to be able to quickly reference the column names of the data table that we just defined, and obviously their respective data types as well. So that's that guy. Go ahead and hit OK here. Build data table. We need to be able to save our data table. We have not done anything with it yet. It's just simply in its columnar form that we defined here. We need to define a new data table. So Control K here and say DT underscore, we'll just call this one ticker results, and hit enter. You'll notice in my variables now I should have a new data table of ticker results. Go ahead and save here so we don't lose any of our work here, adding our new data table. So that's done. Probably not a bad idea here to rename. So create primary ticker results data table, just so we know what's going on here. So kind of a quick little refresher here. Mind you, we're in our for each loop here. Bringing each of our ticker results back, loading it into the UI like we have done earlier. Then the invoke extract workflow. This is where we're getting all the data from the web page, the data coming back to us again via the arguments here. We now need to take the extracted values and load those into our data table. There's an activity out here that allows us to add a data row to a data table. Add data row. We want to do this immediately after we get out of the extract ticker results process, out of that workflow. So bring add data row immediately underneath. It needs to still be part of the for each loop, I guess is what I'm really trying to get at here. So if I go to my for each loop, follow the little blue line all the way down, notice the add data row lives inside of the for each loop. So it's going to make, this is going to ensure that a record is added for each and every single row inside of our data table. Or we'll add, yeah, we'll add a row for every single ticker symbol that is processed inside of the data table. Make sure I clearly articulate that correctly. So add data row. Notice the input here, it's either expecting a array row, a data row, and then obviously it needs to know what the data table is that we want to add the new row to. So the first things first here, we know our data table is going to be DT underscore ticker results. We don't have a data row variable defined. We do have our dictionary here. We know what an array is, so let's actually use this array row activity here. You notice it pulls up a blank expression editor window here. This is where our notepad and our paint capture of our data table becomes extremely important. Notice array row, if we do an open and close here, open curly bracket, close curly bracket, recall that is the notation for an empty array, no data in our array. So what this is going to clue us in on is we need to pass in an array. So each element of this array aligns to the various columns of our data table. So bringing paint back to the foreground here for just a moment. Array index 0 would be ticker symbol, array index 1 open value, 2 52-week high, and so on down the line. So we just need to map our dictionary to each of the respective values in the data table. I'm going to move paint over on my other monitor. I'm also going to move notepad over on my other monitor because then these become the values that we need to pass into the array row. So move this over to my other monitor. This is one of the rare cases where we can actually put lines, put multiple lines into an expression editor, which makes what we're doing a lot easier to see. The first column that we want to add data to is the ticker symbol. And recall, we're still inside that for each loop. We know that the ticker symbol is simply contained in the variable ticker. Notice if I don't put a comma, it's happy. If I ran my automation, if I saved this and ran the automation here, I would have a ticker value in the ticker symbol, column. Each ticker symbol would be loaded, so there'd be individual rows for each. But then the data, the rest of all the other columns would be blank. So that's where I need to specify the next column. So I put a comma for the next line. This is looking for open value. Recall here, this is where it gets a little tricky. If I do a period here, I can see I've got my dictionary here. I can, in quotes, make sure you get rid of this little period. The only way to get that thing to pop up is to do the period. I simply want to have ticker, comma, and then dictionary ticker values right here. I want to do a little bit of cheating here. I want to copy this with a comma here at the end. I want to put one of these in for each of the individual values that I have, and we'll come back and paste in the individual values. So open value would be this one, 52-week high, market cap, industry rank, industry, percent from 52-week high. This last one down here is the column for min max open value. We don't have that yet, so I want to simply denote this with a blank space here. So that's why I'm doing a quote. This is, again, the 52-week, or excuse me, the min-max open value that we're going to populate here in a moment. Recall, too, we also wanted to make sure that this value is blank whenever the record does not match. So that'll ensure that that record is always blank. So to clean up, this is where I'm using Notepad again. I'm going to copy my open value, paste it into the column for open value. Make sure you get the value on my clipboard, and paste in open value. The third column, 52-week high. Make sure that matches your 52-week high value from your dictionary market cap value being the next value here. Industry rank, industry, and the last but not least, the percent from 52-week high. So you can see what I've done. I've taken each of the values that we extracted from our extract ticker results, was passed back again inside a dictionary open value, and then took the keys that we had from when we loaded them. Just the same keys are applied here, and subsequently loaded the record. So if I hit OK here, notice I've got no errors. It looks like life is good. We've now officially added all those records into our data table. So at this point, we have officially processed all of the records. They're all now loaded into the data table. The next thing that we want to do is to start looking at the smallest and largest opening values and denote accordingly. So this implies outside of the for each loop. Now that we've got the data loaded, the very next thing that we need to be able to do is now figure out which one is got the largest and which one has the smallest open value. So I want to make sure that I bring an activity in right here. So what I've done is I highlighted the for each loop. I want to make sure that the next activity lives immediately underneath of my for each loop here. So there is an ability here to do a sort on our data table, taking advantage of the ability of sorting data. I want to make sure this lives again outside of my for each loops. That's why I highlighted it. That's where the blue bar is at. Bring this one in directly underneath the for each loop. I need to be able here to look at the entire set of all the data that has been loaded from our process here. Notice the sort data table option. It's expecting what data table do you want to sort. Obviously, in our case, we want to sort our ticker results. Where do you want to save it to? So you actually have the ability to leave this data table in a pristine state, untouched, or you can simply specify the same data table again, overwriting the previous one. So that's fine for what we're doing. For some reason you ever needed to retain the results in its original state, then sort, that's where it gives you the option to potentially export to a different data table, or you can simply overwrite the existing one in the sorted fashion here. So that's good enough for what we're doing. The sorting columns down here, how do you want to sort the data table? What column do you want to sort on? So if you have a data column, an index, obviously talking about what column number. To me, this is the easier one. What column name do you want to sort on? So again, this is where having paint here is awesome. We're talking about sorting the open value right here, smallest and largest open value, and denote accordingly. So we need to sort, going back to paint here, this column here. So open value, open space value, capital O, capital V. Let's make sure we match it exact. If you're ever in doubt, you can always come back up here, data table, hit the little edit here, copy your value exactly. So that's all I'm doing here is I added this to my clipboard, cancel. I didn't make any changes there. Come back down to data table. Notice it says name as string. This implies it needs to be in double quotes. It's going to tell me to sort the data table DT ticker results, the open value, in this case, ascending or descending order. So obviously smallest value that's sorted ascending is going to say take the smallest, put it at the top, and the largest value, put it at the very bottom. So sort data table here. To clean this up a bit, find smallest open value. That's exactly what that's done. The very first record in our data table when this executes will be the company that has the smallest open value listed, which is exactly what we're trying to go for. Now that we have the smallest open value identified, we need to be able to go in and actually update the data table. Recall a data table is nothing more than a variable. You know, in this case, a bit of a special case in regards to it being more like an Excel spreadsheet, again, holding the rows and columns of all the data that we've since captured previously as part of that for each loop. Now, the awesome part with the data table, we actually have the ability to manipulate individual cells within the data table, and it's done using an assign activity. So I'm going to bring an assign activity in immediately underneath the finding of the smallest open value, and I'll be able to actually manipulate that last column that we've got. So if you recall, in our build data table, we did the screenshots. We've got the min/max open value. I can actually reference the very first row, so remind you with what we've done a moment ago. That very first row of the data table record contains the smallest open value now. So in our assign activity here, I can specify DT ticker results dot rows. Rows actually acts like an array. Notice when I hit the open parenthesis here, it's saying index as integer. It's looking at each row of the data table almost as if it was an array. You know, conceptually, or really behind the scenes theoretically, it is actually a two-dimensional array would be the more common technical term to be used here. But we're able to reference each row based on its index value. So similar to what we did with the arrays earlier. So the very first row follows our same syntax using a zero-based index like we do with all of our other arrays. So stating this right here, let me go over and put it in the two box so we have a bit more real estate here. This is telling me to take the data table or ticker results data table, bring back the very first row. There is a property out here called .item. When I do an open parenthesis here, notice it's, if I tab down here one, let me try this again, open parenthesis, if I arrow down one, you'll notice here column name as string. It allows me to actually put in that quote min/max open value right here. This now is talking about specifically row 0 in the min/max open value column. On this side here, we want to say not maximum, in this case this is minimum. So we'll update our statement here and just simply say assign, or maybe a better way of saying it, update smallest or minimum open value. So this is kind of a bit of play on the capabilities of the system here. Kind of two activities allowing us to sort the open value in ascending order, making sure that the smallest value is in the very first row. So when we hit this activity here, we say in the very first row, instead of the open value column, look at the min/max open value and simply put in the word minimum. What's awesome here is we can then reverse this logic a bit. I can actually copy each one of these activities, paste them immediately underneath, and reverse the process of our sort, and then subsequently update the last row. So now that I've copied both activities and pasted them in the same sequence here, instead of saying find smallest, let's say find largest open value. And the magic here is simply to take what we did before, instead of ascending, make it descending. So this now puts the largest value in the very first record, and the smallest at the very bottom. So it's reversed the sort order, putting the largest open value at the very top. So then on the opposite side here, it's a matter of saying maximum. We don't need to make any changes here because now the maximum value is again in the very first row, so row 0 again. Obviously change our title here, largest/max open value. Largest/maximum open value. Again, using that same exact result. If you want to make sure your column names are right, you're always able to come up here to the data table, grab the value here, then /max open value. This is just a good safety check too, just to make sure you have the values in here exactly as expected. I think I typed it in the same, but just to make sure. Yeah, it looked like it matched. So yeah, notice the OK button's not there. So that means my column name is exactly correct. So if we were to run our automation, we'll do it here in just a moment. Our min and max should now be updated accordingly based on our sorting that we did right here. Going back to our requirements, that now knocks out which one has the smallest and largest open value and denote accordingly. The last thing that we need to do before we build our spreadsheet is to compute the industry rank based on the values provided in the industry rank text box. So more specifically, this was the ask that we specifically call out back here to UiPath. This calculation right here, so if I bring calculator in, it's this manual calculation right here, 127 out of 255. Notice right here, it gives us the 50%. So 49.8, obviously rounded off. So trying to make sure we get the uniform value here of what this industry rank, being able to take the 127 and the 255. Obviously, I'm sure some of you are probably saying, well, why didn't we do that here inside of our extract ticker results, similar to some of the logic that we did here? Obviously, we could have included that logic right here, but from a training and educational opportunity here, I want to go ahead and include this in the main logic here and give us an opportunity to work with the for each row activity. So we obviously have a data table here. That's what we're doing here, going through the loop of the data table and being able to do the update in this particular spot. Obviously, neither one's necessarily right or wrong. There may be, with the way we've already built our logic, a bit of a preference to include this logic in the extract ticker results XAML file. But again, what fun would that be, and especially in context of a training opportunity, an educational opportunity here. Let's bring our for each row activity in and ensure we have an opportunity to play with it. So for each row activity, bring this in immediately underneath our maximum here. Remember, for each row is talking about specifically looping row by row through a data table, as opposed to a for each loop that deals more, or for each loop that mainly deals with processing list type data. So in this case, for each row, if I do DT underscore ticker results here, that's obviously the only data table we currently have available to us. We then are obviously going to walk through each row. For each row here, we need to bring in a, let's see here, before we get too far down the road, we obviously need to be able to extract out the values here. So let's temporarily bring in a right line activity here, just kind of as a dummy placeholder. I'm going to have it with no value and simply put a breakpoint right here. What I'm ultimately trying to go after here is the ability to play around with the intermediate window, excuse me, the intermediate window again here, so I can try to work on doing the data extraction to get the 127 and the 255 value out of this particular string here. So this kind of does one of two things. It'll allow me to pause the execution here to work on building out the new expression that's needed here. It's also going to allow us an opportunity to do some double checking here with our new logic here, which obviously is a good heads up to say we need to be able to fully run our automation again. I'm going to go ahead and close the web browser here, make sure we only have make sure I don't have any web pages currently up and running. And from main, go ahead and hit debug file here. This time, obviously, we need to go through. This will be one of the first times we fully have run the automation outright since we ultimately, built that logic earlier on. We have, to this point, been testing just single pages out one at a time through the extract ticker result XAML file. This is also really, it's an awesome opportunity to really justify the value of that single XAML file, as all these individual company pages are currently getting extracted here. If you think about it, the value proposition here with that, individual extract ticker results XAML file is it's allowing us the opportunity to test out that functionality for a single file here, as opposed to having to fully run through all of the records of our entire automations. So at this point, you can see where it's taken its jolly sweet time going record by record here. It's going to take us a bit of time to get back in order to, number one, test the min-max logic that we did. And then obviously we're going to have to rerun this one last time once we get our new logic in here for being able to update the industry rank values. So allow this thing to process and load the data here, so we can then work on building that expression to extract out the required values. So again, here we are on Amazon. You can see we're taking our sweet time here. That is a-okay. Give this thing just a minute here. Go ahead and load the Walmart page here. Getting there. One thing to point out, I don't think we've talked about this too much yet either, why we have an opportunity. When these automations are running, you want to kind of get yourself comfortable with the idea of hands-off keyboard, hands-off mouse, because depending on what the bot is actually trying to do through the automation, if you're attempting to, complete some other various tasks while the bot's running, there's a chance that the bot's not going to be able to necessarily click on the buttons or type into fields the way that it ultimately needs to do. So it's critical or imperative that when these bots are running, we make sure that we don't interact with the keyboard or mouse. Allow the bot full access and control over your machine while it's processing. It just eliminates any potential snags or hiccups that the bot might encounter as it's trying to go through the automated processing that you've embarked it out to complete and do. So here's Twitter. And last but not least, we finally reach Facebook. Allow this page to load, and we should fairly quickly hit the breakpoint here once this page loads. All right, the Facebook page is successfully loaded. Give it just a second. This is a bit tricky because I don't have, if you have multiple monitors going, you could have Studio running on one side and your web page on the other. In my case, for the video share here as part of the recording, I've got both on the same monitor. So I'm going to quickly peer over and see. It does appear that we've hit our breakpoint here. So one of two things that I want to be able to do, obviously build the expression, but since we're here, I want to expand out the local windows here, expand out the variable here for their data table for ticker results. I want to expand out the rows in the raw view. And I want to see in here, kind of doing a quick data validation here. I've got a maximum on Amazon that is at an open value of 32.75, and I've got a minimum down here on Twitter that has an open value of 54.24. So notice the sort here. It's still in that original sort here where the maximum's on top, minimum's on the bottom. That's why you're seeing it showing up in this view. But most importantly, maximum there, all these other ones are blank, and then minimum on the bottom. So it looks like our logic there is indeed correct and the data table is still in that same sorted order. So we're able to now work on our expressions here. So going back to what are we trying to solve for here? So I want to bring this back over, go to the intermediate window. Again, we're trying to solve for our industry rank, pulling out the 127 and the 255. So remember, we're working inside of our for each row activity. So we're now dealing with the row variable here. We're not dealing with our dictionary at this moment in time. We're looking at the industry rank. So if I look at my column names, I want to bring paint back to the table here. The row, specifically the industry rank column, is the value here that we're ultimately trying to go after. That's where it's currently saved at. So if I do row, I need to do question mark row. And then it's asking here, it says column as data column. If I arrow down, I can specify the column name. So again, this one is industry rank. And you'll notice there's my 16 out of 255. And this is actually coming from, our first record. This one would be Amazon, I believe, right? Kind of peer through here. There's Amazon, and there you go, bottom 16, 213 out of 255. I can poke around, and if we ran one more iteration of for each row, we'd be able to get to the next company. But that's not really what we're going after here. We need to be able to extract out these two respective values. And this is where you got to get a bit creative in your thinking and logic too. How can we split the string into its various parts? So we looked at the industry rank line earlier and split it based on each individual row after all the new line characters. In this case, we got just a single row of text, so the new line character doesn't make much sense here. But we need the ability to, and I would suggest here, splitting it based on the spaces in the string. So kind of abstract thought here, but thinking of it that way, array, bottom or top or upper being in the 0 index, 16% in the first value, and so on. So if I do a row industry rank here, I got to do a toString because that's coming to us as an object. Then I can do our split, open parenthesis. I want to split based on the space. I have to tell it C right after talking about a character string. If I do that, you'll notice my string now shows up as bottom. There's the 16, 213, and there's the 256. So what we need to be able to do here is we've got the values here. I need to be able to just get those specific values, and we can rest assured that, recalling our last one, we needed the ability to be a bit more dynamic. The text is always going to be in this same format, so trying to get to the end of the string isn't necessarily going to be as important here. So we can say index 5. Notice it's a 6 position array, 0 base, so our last value is 5. That should give me the 255. And if I go back, what I need to go, this would be 5, so 4, 3, it looks like 2 gets me to the 213. So notice those are getting closer. We're dealing with a parenthesis on each one. So if I go back to, in this case, index position number 5, the second one up here, I should be able to do a dot replace, get rid of the closing parenthesis, replace it with nothing, and I should just get, hey, look at there, there's the 255. Do the same thing on the second one, say dot replace here. In this case, the 255, or excuse me, the 213 is dealing with an open parenthesis, close, and then double quote there to say get rid of it. And there's my 213. 213, 255. So if I bring the calculator back to the foreground, I can then take the 213 divided by 255. There gives me my 83.52. Or as you can see here, 16%. That makes pretty good sense at that point. So what we now need to be able to do is take each of these two values, copy that, take that, divide it by the other one, paste that in and try to run. You'll notice it says it cannot evaluate. Again, we're dealing with string. So if I hit up arrow, I could say convert to double, dbl, open parenthesis, close my parenthesis here, do the same thing, c dbl, open parenthesis and close parenthesis here. Still cannot evaluate. Oh, I got a typo here. The first one looked good. Second one, not so much. C dbl, there we go. And there we got the same 83.5 that we had in calculator. Obviously, we probably should, at this rate, take this result, multiply it by 100. That'll get us a bit more of a human legible value. There's the 83. And then we probably, on the other side, should do what we did before, round this value to 2 decimal places. Well, it needs to be math.round. And there's your 83.53. We pull the calculator back out, you'll see the 9 taking the 5.2 to 5.3. Obviously could have looked up here above as well. We also should convert this to a string and append on the percent. So there is the final value that we're going for. I'm going to copy this expression. I'm going to pull my notepad back up just so I don't lose it here. That's the expression that I want to build. Obviously word wrapped here inside notepad to be able to update the industry rank. So I'm actually going to replace this text here with the actual percentage value right there. So now that I have my expression, I can stop my bot right here, come back to our project. I'll go ahead and delete the right line here. And in this case, I want to bring in an assign activity. In my assign activity here, I'm actually able to say row. Remember, it's got the ability to specify the column name. This is going to be industry rank. I actually want to be able to update that particular column. I want to use the expression that I just wrote just a moment ago, so being able to see this in its entirety. There's the row industry rank, updating the actual industry rank column in our data table. Remember, we're dealing with the row here instead of our for each loop, for each row loop. Then I'm going to replace the string. So the entire string that we had, the actual value coming from the web page, replacing it with this computed value here. And the big takeaway with you notice the approach, I took small steps along the way as I built this overall expression. I don't try to build the expression outright in its entirety from the get-go. As I was in that intermediate window, slowly built each piece one at a time until I had the entire desired expression here. So once I have that, that should be good. Obviously here, I probably should put in a notation here to say compute industry rank website text, something along those lines. For each row up here again, probably it makes sense here to clean this up just a little bit as well. Loop through each record of the ticker results, data table, update, industry rank. How about this? Update industry rank column. And obviously down here we're saying we're computing the industry rank from the website and storing it right back out. We'll go ahead and hit save here so I don't lose any of my work to this point. And if we go back to here, we've now completed all of the tasks. We only have one last and final thing that we need to accomplish here. So we removed the industry rank here. We did the percent difference calculation, using the example from this web page here. We determine which ticker has the largest, smallest open value. We just saw that a moment ago, and this is what we just solved for. Right now, the last thing we need to do is generate a spreadsheet. Each row will contain a ticker value. We know our data table has that. We already put the column orders in the right order based on the way we built the data table earlier. And we know very well that our data table and Excel play very close together with one another. So what we now need to be able to do outside of our for each loop immediately below is to add an Excel application scope. So activity-wise, Excel application scope. Bring this in underneath the for each loop. So notice our for each loop here. For each row, I should be more specific. Next activity right underneath it is the Excel application scope. I want to keep this very simple and generic. We'll build the Excel spreadsheet right in line with our project. So using a relative path here in double quotes, simply saying stock results.xlsx for an Excel spreadsheet. And I need the ability to do a right range activity. If I bring this inside the do of my Excel application scope, you'll see here that it's going to place the data table on sheet 1 starting in cell A1, so the upper top left corner. It wants to know what data table, in this case DT ticker results, and options here of adding headers. I want to make sure we have our headers on our data table as well. So if I save this, it's the moment of truth. I want to close IE. I have no Internet Explorer browsers running. Let's go ahead and run our automation outright here and see what our final Excel spreadsheet result output looks like. So hopefully here we get a successful run. We grab all the companies here, process them all successfully, and get a nice clean Excel spreadsheet output once we are completed. So allow this data to process through. Here comes Google. Google has loaded. So again, as this thing's starting to wrap up, we're about done with the project here, just to bring everybody up to speed. The nature of this project, again, was really an opportunity to collectively bring all of the activities that we have studied up until this point, all bringing it all together, into a cohesive automation to where you can see all the activities playing, friendly with one another, where they're actually interacting and providing an actual business result or business output here. What we've done here isn't, necessarily the preferred or right way for building automations. We're going to find using the RE framework that we're getting ready to talk about next being the more preferred approach for building our automations. A bit of a commercial as we have an opportunity here when we start talking about RE framework. It's really just a template that UiPath, the organization, has put together that's in a very structured fashion that really provides a lot of error handling capabilities and mechanisms, within, as well as trying to have some capabilities of being able to, initialize applications, shut, and shut those applications back down on the other side. The logic that we put here when we get into the world of RE framework is going to live in a XAML file known as process. And it's really where the core of our business logic resides. So RE framework is an extremely powerful approach. It's really going to be our preferred manner in which we build and run all of our production grade automations. So take what we did as part of this project. The major takeaway here is think about RE framework when you get there. What we've done here is really just the process aspect of what would really be baked into the RE framework. So again, the major thing with this particular project is really just about setting an understanding for applying the various activities and topics that we've talked about up until this point, bringing them into this cohesive application to where we can see everything run and a bit more of a real-to-life type automation of what we're ultimately going to be getting into in the not-too-distant future. So here comes Facebook. So we should be very close now to hopefully see an Excel pop up on the screen and then get the data loaded. With my double monitor going on, it might show up on the other screen here. That's okay. It's going to simply open it up. It's going to dump in the data table to the spreadsheet and then immediately close back down. I'll pull it back up and we'll take a quick gander, see what type of Looker results we've had to this point in time. So sure enough, Excel right now, as I'm talking on the other monitor, it looks like the results were pretty good, at least the quick glance that I saw. UiPath is blinking now, which is implying to me that execution has ended. It says it was successful in process. So how do we get our spreadsheet here? I want to go back to the project tab and simply hit the little refresh icon here. When I do that, there's the spreadsheet that was exported right here as part of the Excel application scope. If I double click and open this file up, it's obviously going to show up on my other monitor here. I should be able to drag it over here in just a second. It's still opening up. Bring this over, expand these columns out here. And it appears that the data is indeed accurate and correct. Just kind of doing a quick scan here. Got the percentages from our 52-week high. Got our industry rank values here showing up. Open value, everything's good. Our minimum and maximum values here are looking good. At this point, if we were going through a true production grade automation, this is where we would really want to do some calculations on our double checking of our calculations here. Is the percentages actually accurate and correct based on the 52-week high and open value? Is that coming back correct? Is the industry rank percentages all accurate and correct based on the actual values taken off the web page? So for sake of time, we're not going to do that here, but this is where you'd actually want to start reviewing the results of the work that you've done. Is it really meeting the desired results, expectation, and needs that have been asked of us? So again, another one, did we remove industry from the industry rank? Notice everything's nice and clean right here. So that said, it looks like everything that we've done as part of this project is, at least at face value, without doing the deeper check here, successful. So with that said, that officially concludes our stock market project demonstration and project here. Look forward to catching up with you in the next activity.